Good morning. Today is Wednesday, 9/9/2020. I hope you had a good break. We are in week 3, working on chapter 2, and I did grade your assignment from last week, and most of you did very well. The discussions were a little bit wanting, and because of that, we're going to make some changes moving forward, and there's an email that I sent with that information. So basically what that means is if you look at week 2, the things that you're going to be working on is you read chapter 2 and then you work on chapter 2 assignment, and you have to work on the discussion board and then apply your knowledge. So the discussion board is not going to be the typical discussion board that we're used to, but we're going to be doing that through the voice thread. So what you'll do is you read this question here, and I'll talk a little bit about this question and how you're going to be answering that question. Then you'll prepare your answer, and then you'll click on the voice thread here, and you'll be brought to this page, and you'll click on the discussion board there. And then there are 2 pages. Again, we remind you about the discussion board, and we tell you that you're going to be making a video recording. Remember, video recording of yourself answering this question, explaining the difference between the customer facing processes and the business facing processes. These answers are actually found in chapter 2, the second portion of the book, and then which one is more important. And when you're answering this question, you can give me an example of a company. So use a company and then tell me what do you think are the most important one between the customer facing and the business facing. And then your response should be between 2 and 3 minutes. You're going to make a video, click right here, record yourself, and that should be between 2 and 3 minutes. So what that means is that you have to make sure that you prepare before you start making the video. And then once you finish doing that, hopefully, if nobody has made the video, you're the first one, then you'll exit and then come back, and hopefully other people have made the video. Make sure at least you watch 3 of your colleagues' videos, which hopefully will be on this side. And then once you watch at least 3, pick one and comment on it. So you're going to make a comment, and that comment should be between 1 and 2 minutes. So that's how you're going to be able to earn full credit. Last time, some of you just commented without making a video in the introduction, or some of you just made a video and you never came back to comment. You have to make sure that you make a video and then you come back and comment. And that's how you're going to be able to move from this group all the way up here. For now, it's showing everybody here. Nobody has made that. So once you start working on that, it's going to move, and then you'll have that information. So you don't have to keep receiving my notification for you to go ahead and make a comment. So that's how we're going to be doing the discussion boards moving forward. Any question? Are you there?
No questions.
Okay, so that's that part. And we also have another assignment for apply your knowledge. So this is an Excel assignment. Hopefully I'm going to be able to talk about this before the end of the class, and I'll walk you through some of the things that I'm looking for in this assignment. So this is something that you already did before in CIS 1100, and we are going to be revisiting that. Okay, chapter 2 is the same multiple choice like you did before, and look at the due dates. I think I gave you one more day because of the holiday. So instead of the assignment, I think being, were they always due on Sunday? Maybe they are still due on Sunday, but that should be enough time for you to know. Now, chapter 2 is actually heavy with a lot of the concept that you're going to be working on. Depending on your major, you don't need to grasp all of them, but at least it gives you a bird's eye view of how companies use information system. I was very surprised last time because we had a question about how companies use information system, and some of you, I think, you're not very sure about what an information system is, and that's not very good. So like I mentioned in the email, if you're not sure about something, ask your professors or Google and get a more detail, because these questions that we're asking you, they are to help you learn how to communicate, but also when you go for a job interview and somebody is looking at your resume, sometimes they can ask you this concept. They might say, okay, you took this fundamentals of information system. What did you learn about this class? Okay, so if you have not practiced how to answer these questions, then you might find yourself in a jam. So let's briefly go through some of these concepts from this course, and what I'll actually do is, so that I don't hold you hostage kind of thing, we'll actually maybe I should start by going through the apply your knowledge piece for the assignment. So what you'll do is you'll open this file here, and I'll open that file, save it there. And what we're doing here is we have some data, and you're trying to see how we can use this data to help us in decision making, because that's the whole idea about the concept that you're going to be looking at in chapter 2. We're going to be trying to see how we can make decisions based on it that we have, information systems. Enable editing, and then move this one here. So I'm gonna do something like that. So just bear with me. I'm gonna keep switching a little bit, sharing things. So let's first look at the structure of the course material, and then I'll come back and explain about the assignment application, and we have that. So this slide has a lot of slides. I'm not going to go through all of them, so don't panic already. Okay, so this is chapter 2, and we're looking at what you're calling decision and processes, and then value-driven business. So we are trying to see how we can make the decisions that can improve the business processes so that we are able to create value for our business. And we're doing this using information system. So this chapter is broken down into 2 sections. We have section 2.1, which looks at what you're calling decision support system. And just like the words, you're making a decision, and for you to do that, you're going to be using some systems to help you improve your decision making. So a system is nothing else but is made up of components that work together to achieve a specific objective. So in this session, we'll be looking at how we can make decisions for business and how we can measure whether the decision that we are making will contribute to the business. And then you're going to use management information systems to help us in doing that. Remember, people have been making decisions in business for a long, long time, since the time when they were using seashells during the barter trade. But management information systems, all computers, just came the other day. And now we're using computers to help us in making the decisions. So that's the concept of information systems. And then we bring in the management, because we are going to be managers, hopefully. Some of you are going to start your own businesses. So when you start your own businesses, you're going to be making decisions. And to make those decisions, you're going to be using information system. Then we have what you're calling artificial intelligence. You can also use that. Most of you nowadays, if you're applying for a credit card, you rarely speak with somebody. You just do a website, put in your information, and then there is an algorithm that runs the data, and based on the values that you put in, it tells you whether you qualify for it or you don't qualify. And if you qualify, they tell you this is going to be your interest rate, this is how much they're going to give you, and on like that. So in the old days, we used to speak with somebody who you will actually ask you for your social security number, your date of birth, and where you work and all that. Nowadays, you don't do that because that has been automated. So that's what you mean by decision support systems, is whereby we're using computers or what you call technology to help us in making decisions. Then you look at what you're calling a business process, okay, and how we can help improve those business processes. Okay, so these are some of the learning outcomes, and hopefully we'll be able to look at them. Some of the key takeaways from here is that you should be able to define what are critical success factors for an organization. What are those things that the firm is trying to do to achieve competitive advantage? And then what are the key performance indicators? How do they measure that? Okay, so we know Central, we are trying to make sure that we graduate you within 4 years. And then how do we ensure that we are doing that? One of the key performance indicators is that we should have very few students retaking classes. Okay, so for us to be able to measure that, our critical success factor is 4-year graduation rate, and then a performance indicator is the number of students who are retaking the classes. You're trying to lower that. So the same thing for our companies. Key success factors is they are trying to make sure that they have what? Higher revenue. Key performance indicators is at the end of the year, how many customers are buying, like what you call the repeat customers. So we're going to be looking at those in more details. Okay, and managerial decision making. So when you're making a decision, we have what you're calling the decision making process. So there's usually 6 steps that you can go through that. We have what you're calling the problem identification. So you identify what the problem is. For an organization, they can have customers returning a lot of what items. So to do that, you want to make sure that you have very few customers who are returning items, and then you can go through the data collection. So see, are there specific items that customers are returning the items for? And then you have to come up with a solution. Are you going to let the customers return the item? And then from there, you're going to be able to determine what's going to be the duration of the time that you can give customers to return the items. If you go to a store like Nordstrom, I think they give you like almost 45 days to return your item. If you go to Walmart, how many days they give you to return your items? Walmart, anybody know? Or Target?
Anytime?
You say 7 days?
No, I said, is it anytime? Like they don't have a specific time you can turn it in. You could just turn it anytime you want, or I don't know.
Oh, really? Once you buy item, you can return anytime you want?
From Walmart, I'm saying
Okay.
I feel like
I didn't.
it's not a time.
Okay, I didn't know that, but I know some of the stores some have like a specific days that you have to, especially for like electronics. So I think maybe Best Buy, I think it's like 14 days or something like that. I might be wrong, but something close to that. But I know Nordstrom, they give you, because I bought some things from Nordstrom and I had to take them back. And I had these long time, I almost forgot to take them back. I think it's like 45 days. So that's how you come up with that solution. And that's going to be based on the data that you have from your customers. So they arrive at that by analyzing the data that they have. And then you're going to test the solution. So you give the customers a month to return the items, and you realize that people are using the stuff and returning them. So you want to make sure that you maybe reduce that period so they have not used the items for so long. And then some of the stores will actually have what they call the restocking fee. So if you return an item, they make sure that you pay a fee. And that's another way of discouraging people from returning items. Some of the stores will actually tell you before you return this item, call this number somewhere. Okay, so those are all what you're calling the solution. So you have different solutions, and then you implement the one that is good, and then you go back and then you review and you say, okay, we said we can have 14 days return. How many customers are returning items? And then you see if the number of return item is okay, then you can work with that. So anytime that you're faced with a problem, you can follow these steps. They don't have to be necessarily 6 steps, but most of the components that are used in solving a problem are going to be like this. And the same way, if you're not doing very well in your classes, some of you have seen you doing what? Changing the majors. So you identify that you're not doing very well in your classes, and how do you identify that? By looking at the class that you have taken, okay? And then you decide, I'm going to change my major, okay? And then you say, okay, maybe I'm going to go to this particular major. You might talk to people who are in that major, and then you start taking classes in that major, and then you see, okay, I'm actually doing very well. I'm going to stick in this major, and then you end up doing what? Graduating. So businesses are faced with the same problem. You have a product, and then customers come, they buy the product, they keep returning. You got to find why they are returning that. And that's why most of the stores will give you that card that you use for buying, so that anytime that you do make a transaction, they know what you're buying, and they even know the time that you're buying it, and they know where you're coming from. And sometimes they can actually use that data. They do what's called data mining, and they even know how much money you make. So most of the stores actually, if you go online, you'll be able to tell. Like Walmart, they know that people who shop at Walmart, they make between this amount of money in a year. People who shop at Target, the same thing. People who shop at Macy's, those are two different crowds. Like majority of the people who shop at Macy's are totally different from people who shop at Walmart. So every store knows the demographic of their customers. And that is the way that you're going to be able to know how you're going to be marketing to them and what you need to market to them. So all that is part of what you're calling information system. And we're using that to help us in managing. So when you're making decisions, usually you have these 3 layers. Operational is at the bottom here. So if you think of a grocery store, operation is when you're doing the restocking. So how often are you going to be restocking the shelves? And then you're looking at the managerial. This is whereby the manager has to know to do the scheduling. Which employees are going to be coming to work when? Do we need to have all different levels of employees at different times of the day? And then you have the strategic, that's the long term. So this is the CEO of the company who are going to be making these decisions. And for you to be doing all these, you're going to be using information system. In the old days, you never used to do that. But now you need information system to help you in make those decisions. Are we making sense?
Yes.
Okay, so operational, we are saying they are at the bottom. Employees develop, control, and maintain core business activities, and these are required for the day-to-day operations. So we say these things like what? Restocking, okay? And these decisions are very structured, okay? So the information for making that decision is straightforward. You don't need a lot of education or a lot of technical details to restock the shelf. And then you move the managerial decision making. So you're looking at the operations, and then you identify how you're going to adapt and then leverage the change. So if an employee does not show up to work, the manager has to determine who is going to do that coverage. So you have those kind of decisions. Now, some of these are going to be a little bit same structured, but also you don't need a lot of what lead time to come up with a decision. An employee doesn't show up, you have coverage for that person. Okay. Now, when you look at the strategic, these are at the top of the organization. This is what the CEOs do. This is what's called the top management team. Okay, and this is in line with the goals and the objective of the company. So usually these are what you're calling unstructured, because these are usually like 3 to 5 years out. So you're making decisions that you actually don't know what's going to happen out there. Okay, so now we are going through the sensors. We not very sure about what the results are going to be, but once the results come out, then companies have to start making decisions 3 to 5 years out. I think we just opened Wegmans in Morrisville. Not we, but the company opened a Wegman somewhere in Morrisville, and that building has been, I think, ongoing for the last maybe 8 months. But that decision was not made this year. So Wegman probably they made that decision maybe 2 or 3 years to open that location. So that's part of what you're calling a strategic decision. And they must have looked at the demographics around this place, looked at the level of income in that location, because Wegman, they're usually a little bit higher. Okay, so the same, I think they are usually sometimes maybe the same level as Whole Foods. So to make those decisions, you have to develop the strategy of the organization, and that takes some time. So those are what you're calling structured decisions. Okay, so measuring the business decisions is going to be determined on the project. So opening a new store is an example of a project. And then we have what you're calling the metrics. So measurements that evaluate the results to determine whether a project is meeting its goals. So for Wegman, some of the metrics, one, the store, when they open the store, then they have to look at their customers, and then they see the sales. Okay, and they say, is this what you had projected that you're going to be doing? And the same thing for other companies like Walmart and Target and all that. And also remember, those other stores that are in the same neighborhood have to evaluate their strategy. So if there is, for instance, a Whole Food near where Wegmans open, they might have to lower some of their products. And sometimes they'll actually do what's called market intelligence to go in and find out what is the price of the items in a particular retail store, and then they come back and see how they can leverage that for their customers. So that's part of using information system to help you in decision making. So you'll be seeing concept on project and then the metrics. And some of you have taken or will take a class that's called project management, and you'll be going through the definition of what a project is, but it's nothing else. It's an activity that a company undertakes, and it has what you're calling a unique to produce a unique product or service or results, and it has a definite beginning and a definite end. So a project is a unique endeavor undertaken by an organization with the goal of producing a unique product, service, or result. Usually has a specific beginning and a specific end, and it uses resources. Okay, we mentioned about the critical success factors, and you're saying these are the crucial steps companies make to perform to achieve their goals and objectives. Okay, so you'll be seeing this, the critical success factors is very, very important. So these are some of what companies consider to be their critical success factors. Create high quality product. Okay, that's what we want to do. That's how we define what our success. Retain competitive advantage. By now, we should be aware of what competitive advantage is. And you should be able to use the Porter's model. Okay, remember competition within the industry, the power of the suppliers, the power of the customers, substitute products, then what? New entrants in the market to maintain compare, and you only want to get into an industry if you have competitive advantage. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to succeed. And that's what most of you say you want to start a business. You have to be very specific about what is it that you're going to be bringing. What is it that your business is going to bring to the market? What is unique about your product? So, or your business. Because you also say that you have to remember those are the three factors. You're looking at focus. Are you going to be only focused on one industry sector or on your product? Are you going to be lowering cost like Walmart? Okay. Or are you going to differentiate your products or services? And then you have to think a value chain from what you call from the farm to the table. How are you going to be ensuring that you're meeting those objectives? So reduce the product cost, increase customer satisfaction, hire and retain the best professionals. So these are the critical success factors for an organization. And then we have the key performance indicators. So you set the goals and then you see the metrics. So this is the metrics of how you're going to be able to make sure that you're hitting your key critical success factors. So something like the turnover rates of employees. You want to make sure that if you're going to be creating high product quality, you need to make sure that you don't have a very high turnover rate of employees, because if you have very high turnover rate of employees, then it means you have to keep retraining your employees. Okay, and then that's going to take time, and you can use information system to help you in making sure that your employees turnover is not very high. Retain competitive advantage. Okay, and you can do that by looking at things like what percentage of help desk calls answered in the first minute. Nobody likes to be kept on the hold. Okay, so if you want customers to be giving you more reviews and coming back to you, make sure that you know the time that takes. When somebody calls in, some of the company tell you, due to high call volume, your call is very important to us, blah blah blah, is going to be answered in XYZ minutes. When you see 3 4 5 minutes, people are like whatever. Okay, so you want to make sure that you know how long it takes for calls to be answered, so that if you don't have enough employees who are picking up the call, then you can increase the number of employees. Number of product returns. Okay, so this will be talking about also the quality of your product. Too many items being returned, that's not good for your business. Number of new customers, you want to make sure that you know how many customers you're getting, and also repeat customers. Okay, and how much customers are spending. So these are some of the key performance indicators that you can help you to measure to see whether you are hitting your critical success factors. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay, so we talked through that, key performance indicators. And then we have what we call external. So we can have external key performance indicators, something like the market share. So with market share, it's very easy to determine the market share. And basically what we say is, in market share, what you look at is you have a company. So market share, we say is the sales of the company. So we'll call it company X divided by the total sales in the industry. Okay, so that's how we compute the market share. We're saying is the sales from the company, which is this in case company X, divided by the total sales in the whole industry. So if you look at the retail industry, and we can do something really quick here. Oh wow, it's almost 11. Okay, no 10. I'm sorry. Let's see whether we can do this. Retail industry market share in the US. Grocery market share. Okay, I'm not getting some good information. But if you Google market share for retail industry, you'll see companies like Walmart, Target, they are usually the ones that dominate. Now, the other key measure for key performance indicator is what you're calling the return on investment. And return on investment, how do you compute that? Return on investment, somebody? ROI, return on investment. What is the formula for return on investment? Anybody home?
Net profit divided by cost of investment times 100.
Okay, so that's when you're doing the ratio. Okay, so usually the easier formula is profit, which is what you're calling the return over the investment. Investment. Okay, and investment is the same as cost. Okay, so whatever you have put into the product. Okay, now you want this value to be what? You want your return on investment to be what?
Positive.
Positive, yeah. So you want it to be positive, but even more important, you want it to be a whole number or bigger than one. Let me put it that. You want it to be bigger than one. Because if you have $2, which is your return, okay? So if you have a return on investment and you're saying your profit is $2 and you put in $4, this is the same as what? 1/2, okay? So that's not good because your what? Your return is more than your cost is more than what? Than your profitability. Okay. So if you can have you have a number that is positive, and even better if you can have a value that is greater than 1. Okay, so that's the return on investment, which is usually an internal. So this is an internal key performance indicator because it's showing you do this for projects. When you're working on a project, you want to make sure that the project is going to give you a positive return on investment. And for most of the companies, this might actually be a good return. This is 50%, that might be good enough. For some companies, they'll only do undertake projects that will give them a 70% return on investment. For some, even 5% is good. Most of the companies in the stock market, you can do that and you can Google and find out what is their return on investment. Most of them is around 40%. Okay, for. So the same thing you have to be looking at for your education. What's going to be the return on investment? So think about that. Okay, another metric is what you call efficiency and effectiveness. And with efficiency is always about the time. Okay, so you're measuring the performance of management information system. So this is throughput, like how much information is going through the network. So in case you have a network, you want to make sure that there are no bottleneck. People can get their services like Spectrum and Google Fiber and all that. You don't want to make sure that you don't have other customers calling you and telling you they can't access the internet. And the same thing, you have the speed of the transaction. Okay, if you're trying to do something like online banking, your information is going straight without any problem. And then in terms of system availability, okay, when you're logging into your bank, you don't want to be getting outages. Okay, you want to make sure the system is working properly. And the same way, when you're shopping online, you want to make sure that if you go to a website, you can go in, get all your resources, put everything in the cart, and go out without the system doing what? Rebooting or freezing. So that's part of what you're calling efficiency. Then we have effectiveness. So this is measures the impact of MIS and how and what this impact has on business processes and activities. So this includes things like the customer satisfaction and customer conversion rates. So you're looking at the efficiency, we're saying is the speed, and effectiveness is how good something is. Okay, so you're looking at how satisfied your customers are. And then when somebody comes to your website, how many of those customers actually buy something? That's what you call customer conversion rates. Okay, when people go to the target, sometimes they're just browsing. How many of those customers end up buying something? And then once they buy something, how many of them are return customers? Okay, because that can also help you to see how your business is doing. So these are things that you can help with information system. And for most of the business, you want to make sure that efficiency and effectiveness is moving high. You want to be in this region right over here. You don't want to be down here. Okay, so benchmark is nothing else but it's a baseline, and we use that to help us to improve the system. So I won't go through that. And then we talk a little bit about a model. So a simplified representation or abstraction of reality. So we have all watched Victoria's Secret models, and we know that is not the reality. Or is it? Anybody out there? Anybody home?
No.
Okay, so you know that when they walk on stage and they're showing us all those beautiful stuff, that's not how reality is. So that's what you mean by a model. Simplified representation of what? Of reality. Okay, so we can use the models to help us to calculate the risk, okay, understand uncertainty, and basically what you're doing is even before houses are constructed, sometimes they'll have like a model that you can go and see. And usually most of the companies will create a model and then they use that to see how that product is going to look when it is completely finished. And you can use that in helping you to look at the risk and also to understand the uncertainty. Do people like this product? If they don't, then you can make some changes. Sometimes you make a model and you give people to look at it and then they can make some what? Some changes. So you can change the variables. And then you can also help you to manipulate time and make what? Make some decisions because you're getting input from people. So the reason why we're talking about the model is because you're going to be improving a business process. And a business process is nothing else but is those steps that you take when you're carrying out a business operation. If you go shopping, most of the stores, you start by getting what? When you walk, you have a parking lot, you park your car, you get out, and then you have a what? A shopping cart. You get a shopping cart, you walk through the store, you pick all the items, and then it's time for checkout. You can go either self-checkout or somebody is at the count the register, they check you out, they bag your stuff, you get your stuff, you go back to return the cart, no, put the stuff in your car, and then you return the cart. Of course, you know there are some people who never return the cart in the right place, but you return the cart, good citizens, and then you drive off. That's what you call a business process. Okay, those steps that you followed in completing that task. So you can improve those business processes and use information. So actually, we have some stores that have like what you're calling sensors. So these sensors actually help to track the customers as they walk through the store. So they see where customers spend most time, which routes the customers are using, and then you can use that data and that information from those sensors to help you in stocking. So you know if there are some items that you really want to sell, you want to put them on that line. And then also the kids that are in the store. So you have some marketing analysis and then see the level of the kids, like the eyesight. So you can put items where the kids will be able to see them. And you know, stores like it when parents go with kids because most of the kids, when they see something, they really want it. So that's part of what you're calling modeling. So you can use that to help you in making the decisions and then help you in improving your business. So in terms of making the decision, we have these three main types of systems that you can use in making the decision. We have what you're calling the transaction processing system. So this is like the one that you use for stock taking. Okay. So when you check out at the register, you scan the item and then they run your bill and they give you your receipt, part of what you're calling a transaction processing system. At the end of the day, they'll be able to know this is how much we sold. And then we have what you're calling decision support system. This is used by the managers. So transaction is for operational day-to-day, like inventory management. Decision is for the management, and then we have executive. This is at the high level of the organization, and this usually are a little bit unstructured because they are making decisions, they don't have all the information. So that's why we are calling it unstructured. So as you move up higher, we move from operational to strategic and then from structured to unstructured. So note about that. You'll be seeing a lot of this: transaction processing system, decision support system, and the executive information system. Okay, so that talks about that. If you're doing it at the store, if you're doing it online, so we call them online. Okay, online transaction processing system. And then source documents are the original transaction records. So like for payroll, most of in the old days we used to have like a record of the hours that you worked, and then you'll put that in the system. So that's what you're calling a source document. If you're going to be producing the payroll for an organization, you need the hours that the employees have worked. Okay, and then you have the list that shows that the benefits and things like that. These are what you're calling the documents, and that's how they are related. So you have the input, the source documents, and this is like business process, and then you process that. So you're going to be creating, you're going to be updating, you're going to be deleting, you're going to be writing, and then you're going to be calculating, summarizing. So you have employee X, they worked 40 hours, they get paid $25 an hour. So you do the process, calculate that, and then the output is going to be what? Their check, and then you have the payroll for the whole department. And then you go back and you do that for the next 2 weeks. If there are mistakes, you update that. Now the president is talking about withholding social security. You make some changes to that. So this is how systems work. Okay, and you're talking about the system thinking. So system thinking is a concept whereby you incorporate all the items in decision making. Okay, so system is made up of different components that work together to achieve a specific objective. System thinking is whereby we are incorporating all the elements. So we have the input, we have the processing, and we have the output, and a little bit of the feedback. And the feedback can come from the report, the improvements that you want to make on the system. Okay, so that is that. And then we have analytical processing system is whereby you're using facts to make the decisions. And then we move the support system. So this is whereby you are supporting the management in making the decisions. Okay, so the managers are still making the decisions, but you have systems that are helping them in making the decisions. Okay. Okay, so we actually looked at this concept. These are some of the models that are used by decision support system, the what-if analysis. If you remember in our Excel class, CIS 1100, the ones who were in the class with me, and I'm assuming even the ones who took the class from other professors, you went through a scenario where you're looking at the what-if analysis, whereby you're given a set of scenarios and you have to look at what happens. So you have to make some changes and say, okay, we're going to be selling these items. What will happen if we do what? If we make some changes? So you also have what you're calling sensitivity analysis, the goal seeking, and the optimization. With optimization, I think we did all these actually in Excel. Okay, and this was to help us to see how you can make decisions by varying, making some changes to some of the variables that you have. Okay, so these are some of the techniques that you can use to help you in making the decisions. Okay, so this shows a little bit of introduction, and you don't have to go into more details into this, but at least have an understanding that when you go and put in an order, like online, you buy, you click on some shoes that you want to buy, then that order is going to be processed. So there's a system. This represents a system, a database that is storing information about that shoes, and then it has to go to the sales data in the organization. So we have the system here, the transaction, and then we have the decision support system back here. And basically what is happening here is the company has to look to make sure that it has what? It has the shoes and the size that you want. Okay, so a few weeks ago, I was buying a printer and I went to Dell, ordered the printer, and then they told me the print is going to be delivered after 2 weeks. And then 2 days later, they sent me an email, say there's going to be delivery delay. And then another 2 days later, they told me another delivery delay. So I said, forget about it. So I canceled that order. And then I went to another company's website, Epson, ordered the same printer, and boom, within 5 days, I had the printer. So you can see Dell, they lost that business because maybe the systems were not very well configured, but Epson, the systems were very straightforward and I was able to get the printer. So the same way, so companies have to make sure that they have a system that is helping them in making the decisions. And this is using what you're calling the systems thinking, because you can see that all these components are going to be what? Joined together. Okay, and then at the end of the day, they generate what you're calling the managerial reports. So for you, if you are in marketing or in accounting or hospitality management, you don't need to go into more details about how to design this system. But as a manager, you need to know how these systems work. Okay, so that you'll be able to know where the bottlenecks are, where the problems are, and how you're able to improve your organization. Okay, so you have order entry, you have the inventory, you have the shipping data, and you can see how they are all working together. Excuse me. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there for now. And we remember these charts that can help you in making decisions, pie charts, all the way like that. So what I want to do now is I want to briefly go and talk about one of the pieces of the assignment, and that's the Microsoft Excel file. So any questions so far?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to share this application. So this is the file that you'll have. You'll download it on your computer, enable save so that you can change, and then you'll come up here and you put in your name. And we have some information here. So the tracking donations. So this is the original file, and basically is a file about an organization that is soliciting some money, and they're trying to see who gave them the money and who gave them the most money and all the way like that. So this is the section that has the answers. The assignment is very straightforward. All what you have to do is summarize this data here. So this is the data. You have to summarize this and get some information, and from that you'll be able to make a decision. So we are using this data to help us in making an informed decision. And for us to do that, we have to process the data. That's the whole concept of chapter 2. So we're told the answers are going to be in two groups. We have the amount from each organization. We want to find out how much each organization gave, and then the grand total. And also we want to see the average from each organization and the grand total. Now, if you click on this data, you can see it has some headings. Okay, submitted, that's the date it was submitted. You have the employee ID, last name, first name, organization amount, and donation sent. So it's different ways that you can do this problem. Okay, so if we want to find, for instance, the total donation per organization, so we have diabetic, make a wish. What is the first thing that we might have to do? I need some input from you. We want to find how much each organization
Sort it.
gave. Say that again.
Sort the information
Okay, by what?
by company name, organization.
Okay, by organization. Very good. So you can start by sorting the information. So you click there and then you come up here and you can sort from A to Z, and there you got that. Sometimes they might ask you, if you click on sort, whether you want to extend the sorting, and you can click yes. So we have that. That's very good. Okay. What else? So what is the next step? Now we want to find, we have seen the data that's been sorted. So we want to find out what is the total for what? Amnesty International. What is the total for the animal shelter? So how can we do that for each group? So we want to find the total for all this. So it's kind of like adding all these values and then this all the way like that. Is there a shorter way of doing it? Somebody else?
You can sum, use the formula for sum.
Okay, so use the formula for somewhere. Where do I put the formula? You've seen this before.
You can insert a line, or you can organize it any way you like. Honestly, you can insert lines. You can do it at the bottom. You can do a find, and then it's just a few ways to do it. Honestly,
Okay, so
how
that's
do
one
you
way.
want it done?
I'm sorry?
As it is, how do you want it done?
I just want to find the total for Amnesty International. And then Army Shelter, Cancer Society, and Diabetic Society in the shortest way possible. And then I'm going to do the average. So anybody else? Autumn?
I forgot how to do it.
Okay, Michaela?
I honestly do not know.
Taylor? Okay, so far so good. So that's one way that you can do it. You saw the data. Now, if you want to do it the long way, you can come in here and you say equals to sum. Is it even working? And then you do that, enter, and then you have to come back here and do equals to sum, like somebody who never took a class with Professor Karanja, and you do all this way, okay? And then you come down here, and then you do like that, blah, 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 blah. That's a long, I mean, if you have 10,000 documents, you want to be here the whole day, correct? So remember, some of you said you want to learn about the real world and we're teaching you stuff. This is the real world right here. This is data from a company and you're asked to do what? Summarize the data. Okay. There's no any other better real world experience that you can have than this. So after this, you sorted your data. So is two main techniques that you can use to do this. Do you remember pivot tables?
Yes.
Because we are told to generate what? The total and then what? The average. So what you're going to do for this assignment is because we have two outputs that we want. Okay, I could also have said minimum out here. So you're going to make another bracket. So make a copy of this data here and control and then move it there. So you have first and second, and you come the first one here. And if you go back to the original, if you're using the pivot table, you don't even need to do the sorting thing. So that's how the data was originally, correct? Anytime you click inside the data, your data, and then you just go to insert and then you click pivot table, by default it highlights all your data. See that? Okay, your data is highlighted and it's telling you that's the table, that range that I've selected, and then ask you for what? Where do you want your data to be? So you click on the existing worksheet. I want it to be right here so I can manipulate and play around with it. You click there, then you come in here and then you select the cell where you want your data to start from. I'm going to start from there. Okay, and then you click OK. And then you have the work field here. So you have your model here, and then you have your fields. Okay, so you're summarizing this data. So for the example that we are working with, they want us to do it by what? By the organization, correct? Are we together?
Yes.
But I'm not going to do it by organization for you. Okay, I'm going to do it by what? Let me see. Are they the same employees? Maybe employee ID. Let me show they can do employee ID. Maybe they are the same, maybe they are different. So you can do the same thing. Oh, what happened? Okay, so you'll come in here and you click insert pivot table and you have that existing worksheet. I want it to be right here and you click OK. And if I was doing with the organization, I'll click here and bring the organization down here. But I'm going to do it with employee ID. I want to see how many each employee gave. So you click on the field name, hold the mouse button, and then you drag it to the row, and it gives me the summary of all the what? All the employees. Okay, so there's some repetition because you can see this is almost what? 40 entries, and then we all the way to almost 100 entries. So there's some repetition. Okay, so I want to find out how much each employee did. Okay, so I have the employee ID, and then my values are going to be what? I want the amount. So I have the amount like that. So this shows me how much each what? Employee brought in. And then you have your grand total down here. So now what you'll do is, if this table here was showing employee ID, all of what you have to do is you can copy and then bring here and do what? And do that for that value over there. Now this is for the average. You can come back here because I want you to leave it. If you use the pivot table, then you have to leave it like that and then just copy the value and take them to the other section. And the same thing, so the other part here is asking you for the what? For the average. So you'll come back here, do the same thing. You insert, click the pivot table like that. And you got that and that. You're going to do that one there. Click OK. So I'm doing what? Employee ID, because the same concept. That's my rows. And then I'm doing amount. That's the value. But in this case, I want to see the average. So this is the sum. This is the amount. So you click right there. And then remember, we went through the value settings, okay, because you're going to be trying to change the way the data is summarized. And instead of the sum, we want to do the what? The average. And then you click OK. And that gives me the average what? Each employee, because some of them have more than one value. Some values are going to be the same. But remember, for your assignment, you're not doing for the what? For the employee ID. You're doing for the organization. And that's how you end up answering that part. So that's one way in which you can do that. Now, the other way that you can do this is we went through the summary under the data. So in this case, if you're using the second concept, you'll have to first sort the data, like Saya said. So you do that because this is going to be the variable that you're going to use to help you with that. So you sort by that, and then you'll come to data, and then you remember to use what? The outline, and you have the subtotal all the way down like that. Okay, so you have the subtotal, and then you have at each change in what? So you want at each change in what? Organization, that's what you want, okay? And then you what? The amount is what you're interested in. So make sure you have that in line, and then you click summary below, you click OK, and that will give you the answer. So let's try to do the same using something else, maybe employee ID. So we'll sort by employee ID. And this is the same. So employee ID, we have that. And we sorted that. So we can come to data, and then we say subtotal. And at each change in employee ID, we want to do the amount, okay? And then replace current subtotal summary below the data, and you click OK. And now remember, you're doing the sum for the first time. So you have the sum, and it says what? We can make this change for the selected scale because it was affected pivot table. Oh, we have a pivot table somewhere. Okay. Okay, we had a pivot table. And how do we do that? Okay, no, we don't want to save that. Okay, it went ahead and did it anyway. Now we're doing submitting total for 234. Okay, so we actually have the values for 21. The total is that. So this is not going to be looking very pretty because, okay, so we can see like 234. We have the 234. This is all the 234. We have the total down here, and then all the 243s, we have the total right there. All the 334s, we have that. But for your case, you actually are going to be doing what? The organization. So remember that. So that's for the sum, and then you can come back and do the same thing. So you have this other section here. So you're doing the employee ID. Do the employee ID. You always start by sorting the data if you're going to be using the subtotal, and you get that from the home. So you do that. So that is sorted. And then you'll come to the data and you click subtotal. And at each change in employee ID, because that's your goal. And this time you're going to be using the average. So you're doing the average of the amount. Okay. And then you're going to be putting the values at the bottom. Okay, so for your case, you'll be doing the organization. So right here is going to be organization. One is going to be sum, the other is going to be average. And then remember to check the button for the amount because you want to find out how much they gave. And then you click OK, and you have that. So this gives you the average. Okay, and if you click that, actually it gives you all the averages. So these are all the different employee ID with their average values. Okay, remember we have the sub levels right over here. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we have. That's for that part. Now, the other part of the assignment is I'm going to walk you through this in your book. If you give me a minute. And where was your book? No, don't exit the assignment. Exited the assignment. Okay, start reading. Okay, so Let's come back here and we can share that. So this is the part where you're going to be, the second part where you're going to be working on the voice thread. So this is your book. Keep reading, 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 reading. Yeah, it's a long book. You have to spend maybe 2 or 3 hours reading this and making some notes. And I'm thinking this is on the second part. So this is what we went through, hopefully in a summary. And then you click that, and this brings you to the second part about the business processes, managing business processes. And you have seen this. So most of you, I think some of you are in accounting, and this is what you're going to be doing, creating financial statements, paying accounts payable, collecting, doing that, even marketing, doing all that. And you're going to be using computers to help you do that. That's what you mean by information system. If you're in operations, the same thing. If you're in human resource, you advertise, you bring in the employees, you train them, you enroll them in healthcare, you track their vacation and sick time using information system. Okay, so for most of the businesses, you can see the value chain and what the system thinking. Okay, so marketing is connected with sales and with operations management and accounting and finance and customer service all the way like that. So the question asks you, which one is more important, customer facing or the business facing what processes? Okay, so customer facing is also called the front office. This is what you as a customer, that is how you interact with the business. So we call this the front office processes. So they result in a product or service received by an organization's external customer. Okay, so some of the concepts that define the customer facing processes are like the order fulfilling processes, communicating with customers, sending out bills and marketing, all the way down like that. And we give you some examples here. So if you place an order online, that is going to be processed. That part of what you're calling the customer facing. The customer service, the sales processing, the customer billing, order shipping. This is what you're calling customer facing. Then we have the business facing. We never say this as customers. This is what is going on inside the company. And usually sometimes they call the back end. Okay, so we call this the front end and this is called the back end. So the planning, we never see that. We don't know what Apple is doing unless we look at their 10Ks. Tactical planning, we don't know what they are working back there. Budgeting and forecasting, we don't know how much their budgeting, their budget is. We don't know how they're doing their training. We don't know how they are processing their raw materials and where they are getting them. So the question is, you're looking at this and looking at this, and you tell me, do you think this is the most important, or is this the most important? And then whichever you pick, you can maybe pick one of these two and then use an example of a company to tell me why you think those are important. Okay, remember, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you're going to justify your answer. Are we together?
Yes.
Do we understand what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay, so those are your assignments for this week. And unless there is any question, I think we probably might have done a good job. I don't know. Yep. So that's it. You have the chapter 2 assignment, and then apply your knowledge, and then you have, there's no discussion board. You'll read this information here, prepare a video, and then come back here and record yourself answering this question. And then remember to come back and comment. Any questions?
For the book, when it says to read, it says there's 0 points available. We don't get graded on that, right? It's just to go through the smart book.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just for your own benefit. You want to get some credits for reading the book?
Yes.
Okay. How many points?
100.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording this. So anything